Hello, everyone. I'm super excited for yet another episode of Wings of a Woman. Wings of a Woman is an amazing book that's about to be released in December of 2020. And today I have Matina Singh, Shoma Mitra, and Veena Chaudhary out here to discuss their insights from why they wrote what they wrote, and we will be discussing that with them. You open with your opening question for Veena.
Okay, thank you for having us here, and thank you everyone for listening in on this wonderful book that's coming out soon, The Wings of a Woman. And I've read all the stories and the amazing ones, but I'm going to ask Veena, who's got an incredible story in the book. One is that obviously, first, Veena, tell us what made you write that particular story. So our readers don't know the story. So give them a little bit of an insight, and then I will ask you my question.
Sure. Thank you, Shoma. Thank you, first of all, for curating all our stories and going through some really inspiring, but also difficult times that many of us went through. So my mission is constantly to share what I call the messy middle. We're so used to seeing the before and after of people, seeing the picture, oh, they lost 60 pounds, or this is what they are now when they have the mansion and the Ferrari. But we don't hear how they got there or the experiences they had to get there. And I found that when I was going through difficult times in my life, that's what I was looking for. I was looking for inspiration that, okay, there is hope, there is light at the end of the tunnel. And my mission became that I want to be someone's 4-minute mile. So I want to be that person that can help somebody get through that darkness. When I look back on my life, and I've had numerous experiences, but I would not be who I am today without having experienced the loss of my second child. And that's what I wrote about. It's hard to imagine that, we can have something beautiful or, transformative come from a loss, but that's exactly what happened to me. I literally had to die to be reborn. But in my situation, my daughter died for me to be reborn. And that's what I narrated, the difficulties I went through during that time, the experience, and then the healing and, first of all, getting through the immediate grief, and then the healing and the journey that ensued and the transformation and what helped me get through it.
Yes, and it's an incredible story. The grief is intense, and the results that came from that, the transformation that you just talked about, to be able to come out from that kind of intense grief and loss, and then to be able to come out and teach other people what it is, that transformation. How do you come out of that? That's an incredible thing, and thank you for sharing that in your story. What I wanted to ask, and this is just one aspect of my questions, the other panelists will ask you different things, is as a mother who has also gone through a similar loss, and not probably as traumatic, but nonetheless losing a child is probably the worst thing that can happen to a parent.
Yes.
In such a circumstance, what are your thoughts on grief counseling? Because in our times, there was nothing like this. People just left you to deal with it yourself. And it was almost like people thought, they either said, yes, we understand, but nobody really understands. Or they feel too embarrassed and they leave you to deal with it yourself. So I'd like to know your thoughts on grief counseling, not just from family, but from the system. Should we have grief counselors coming home at such a time and helping with that parent and the loss Yeah, just your thoughts would be wonderful.
Sure. Thank you, Shoma. Yes, definitely. There was, there was some distance between both our experiences, and some things have changed with time. And it's now been 10 years. My daughter would be 10 this November. And it took me 10 years to say the words stillborn and my daughter in the same sentence. She was 39 weeks and 2 days old. So, that morning I was scheduled to go into the hospital to register for the delivery. And I was just so tired, so I didn't go in that morning. And I replay, all those moments, and I think about it. I mean, and it was a textbook pregnancy, and she was a beautiful baby. And it's not something you can wrap your head around. And I used literally every counselor I could find at the time, because it was an extremely isolating experience. There was just no words to define. My husband and I both approached it very differently. Our reaction and our response to what had occurred was very different. I had my mother with me. Her response to the experience was very different. I had a 4-year-old daughter at the time, so I had her needs to consider as well. And even though I had so many friends, we were living in Albuquerque, New Mexico at the time. So we had so many friends, many Indian as well as many American and other cultures. And even all their reactions and responses and support were varied and different. For me, the counselors played a huge role in just coping with the immediate needs of the situation. So not only taking care of my daughter, taking care of the arrangements, and then eventually within 6 weeks, returning back full time to work. So there was just a lot to deal with. And all of that was possible because I took all that help. I was really fortunate. The funeral homes, Albuquerque was, if there's a perfect place sort of to lose a child, I suppose, then Albuquerque was it, because the whole community had created the system of taking care of a woman who's lost her baby. And there's no word for that experience. There's orphan for a child that's lost their parents. There's widower and widower, but there's nothing for that parent. The funeral home provided 3 free grief counseling sessions. I was 35 at the time, and so I was considered a high-risk pregnancy, and so I was seen by a high-risk OBGYN, and she had an entire unit just for counseling women who go through loss or infertility or different things. And I took advantage of all of that. The biggest support I got was through a parents, an online parent support group. We never saw each other, like we never met each other. And this was pre-Zoom. So it was, I don't even know if anyone remembers Yahoo groups, so it was a Yahoo group. And it changed my life. Just being able to share the pain and then share the changes, because it's not pain all the time, and that's hard for others to understand. And when and I lost her the week of Thanksgiving. So it's all, holiday season in the US. And then we were gearing up for Christmas. So everybody's busy celebrating and shopping and doing all those things. And for me, my world had just stopped. And to have all these different avenues, personally, I found it more helpful to leave the house and to go somewhere for the session. That's what I found more helpful. And I was able to, because my daughter was 4. So I think it just would vary based on the mom's needs. I do know there are places and communities where all of that is available as well. What I can say is that a lot of people associate a stigma with getting help. And I can tell you the help helps, because to be functional human beings experiencing our full potential, we have to feel the good and the bad. like numbing the bad does not serve us. And it just, it makes you a shell of a human being, because you cannot feel the good if you cannot experience the bad in all of its, can't say glory, but all of its fullness. You know, you just have to go through all those cycles of pain, the healing, and eventually, you know, just starting to feel human again. And it takes time.
You couldn't have said it beautifully. Like, you know, to get help helps. It helps to get help. And that summarizes it so well. I wish in our Indian culture, help, asking and seeking help, and, you know, being a part of a support group was more common and celebrated than being looked upon as a sign of weakness.
Yeah.
Beautifully said, Veena. Veena, I had a question for you as well.
Sure.
You mentioned in your story that you were facing all these emotions like anger and you know, short temper, and you were irritable. All these emotions that are not supposed to be what an Indian woman shows in her day-to-day life, and yet you were experiencing that. My one question is, why did you choose that word? Like, all these emotions were not right for an Indian woman. And then you also said then you suddenly broke into singing and humming a song one day. How did that transformation happen? Was it a sudden realization? Did you actually curate that experience for yourself? Did you manifest it yourself, or did it just happen organically?
No, it was a series of choices consciously made every single day. You know, I remember when I was a child, and my story was not very different from what you shared too, Kamal. Like, you know, I had a lot of advantages, and a lot of things that were just, you know, as I think Premchand writes, right, behind the parda. So, you know, we were all raised that way, behind the parda. And, you know, we were never allowed to be angry. So that was just not allowed growing up. Oh, you're angry, eat something.
You have to be,
you must be tired.
Yeah,
you must be tired, go to sleep. Or, you know, you just could not express that emotion. And I wish I could say that grief, you know, was clean and neat, and, you know, was that I cried neatly, like, you know, the queen into a tissue or something, or never cried at all. Absolutely not. It just, there was no timing to it. I mean, almost 2 or 3 years, I couldn't walk past the Target baby aisle. Like, I just could not. And I had a child very quickly after, but even then, like, it was so painful, especially the baby girl's clothes. There were just all these triggers, you know, and there were times, my day-to-day, so just things like my milk had let down, you know, and it hurts, you know, there's no baby to feed, and you're in physical pain, not only from having delivered the child, you know, you have all this milk and no baby to nurse, and you eventually have to go back to work, and everybody is expressing their sympathy and love and support. But there are times when all you want to do is scream. That's all you want to do. You want the world to stop, you know, and kind of honor your pain. And that doesn't happen. You know, the earth kept rotating and day turned to night. And so I went through all of that. There were times when I was irritable. And for me, I had to really honor all of that. I had to learn first before I could even expect anybody else to be that way. And the way I was able to do it is I gave myself a lot of room. I just said, nobody knows how to do this. You know, no one knows how to do grief. Mm-hmm. No one knows how to handle a mother who's lost.
We even struggle to kind of connect with someone who's grieving. We always struggle. What would be the right thing to say, or how to interact and not, you know, not be able to be fully present. We all struggle in that way.
Yeah. And, you know, I wish we could, and, you know, my own personality is, I used to always want everything to look effortless. That was my nature. So I would throw this party for 40 people and I wouldn't even have a sweat on my brow. And, that's just my personality. And I suspect it is for many of us, right? Mm-hmm. And this really brought me to my knees. Like, there was no, like all the makeup was off is the best way I can put it. That's it. It was just unvarnished.
Real raw you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the pain was so raw, and it was just like, if I have to get through this, I have to feel all of this. That's the only thing that I did. And what happened is over time, with the support and then making those choices to be present to the pain. I'll give you one example. In the hospital, my labor was 15 hours. And in the hospital, the doctors and nurses came and they repeatedly kept offering me a sedative so that they could, kind of numb me, and I would not really experience those 15 hours. I refused every time. They asked me at least 4 or 5 times because I knew right then in my head that if I numbed myself, the pain would actually last longer than if I was present for all of it. And it was one choice after the other like this, that finally, some months later, I was driving home from work and it was an afternoon, and the blue Albuquerque sky, it's the color of blue, it's almost impossible to describe. And I was driving back, the mountains were in front of me, and I hear this voice in this minivan, and I'm the only person. And I look in the mirror and it's me humming. I did not imagine that day would be possible. Like those 6 months before, they felt impossible.
That's beautiful.
I'm so glad it happened. Do you still remember the song?
I don't. I just remember hearing that clear voice, it was just soft and present, and yeah.
But it only happened because you allowed yourself to go through those negative emotions.
Yeah.
And you allowed yourself to feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
When Robert Frost wrote the poem, the only way out is through. There's just no other way out. I've tried all the shortcuts, by the way. I've tried stuffing myself with food and, ignoring it and numbing it. Luckily, I don't drink or do drugs. Otherwise,
food, drugs, everything else is just a Band-Aid solution. It's not
just a Band-Aid. Yeah. The fact that now I can laugh and share it is proof that, the only way out is through.
You've healed.
Yeah. And but also beautiful how you, in your chapter, you have those 6 main emotions, 7 actually.
Yeah.
Forgiveness in there as well. So those 7 emotions, one of them being compassion. How did that specific emotion make a difference for you?
It was huge, I had come to the US because I wanted to join the WHO, so I wanted to get a degree associated with public health. I wanted to go and, save the world, that's all I wanted to do. And then along the way, I lost my way, and I realized I'd even lost touch with, I was just functioning. I was getting through the days and all of that. And here was this experience that, there's just no way to make it up, right? Like there's no way to describe how you would feel, how it would unfold. And obviously, when you lose a child, all your peers are young too. So they're also all lost. Like nobody knows what to do. In my case, like I had literally never seen a dead body before, until I saw my own baby. And so many of them didn't know what to do. They were trying to be kind. They wanted to show their love. They wanted to be supportive, but didn't know how to respond. And if in that moment, I didn't feel compassion, I could not get through even those 15 minutes of talking to somebody, and that all of those steps, I just realized I kind of stepped into their shoes almost, like, okay, how does it feel to be that person trying to comfort me? There's no words to say. So the only thing I could do was feel compassion. And suffer with them and appreciate the helpers. That was something, that experience completely changed my perspective on community. It wasn't culture, it was cleanly divided into those who helped and those who couldn't or wouldn't, and there's no malice towards anybody, because again, it's compassion, right? But the helpers, it was so clear, like they would bring food, they would bring, an occasional flower or something. They would take my daughter out, so I would get just a little bit of room and space. They would invite me for a meal. Something happens within our culture too, when we kind of like almost stay away from the person who's going through anything difficult. And after that instance, that experience in my life, I went through a horrendous divorce. And that was 10 times worse. It was like as if everybody thought if they were around me that they would be leaving their husbands. I mean, it was just ridiculous, the whole situation. So yeah, my compassion muscle, had I not flexed it because of my daughter's, the lessons she gave, taught me, I don't think I would have gotten through the subsequent experiences of my life.
But you say compassion. Absolutely. Yeah. You talk about compassion for others, but how about compassion for yourself?
Oh, yes. Thank you for reminding me. Absolutely. If I had not exercised that, then I would not have been able to process those negative emotions.
Fill your own cup first. Yes.
Yes.
Else you have nothing to serve.
Yeah. And dropping the judgment, because that was really hard, for me to, allow tears or be less than perfect, or any of those things that, up till then felt so important. And
it's beautiful how you say less than perfect, because we talk to ourselves in such a way that we don't allow ourselves to really feel. And you're talking about all facets of life. You're talking about the denial phase where we don't, and we try to be this perfect human being for others where we can for ourselves.
Yeah.
But you hit a wall at one point because you're not listening to your body
anymore. Yeah. You can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what she taught me. That you just have to show up as yourself. Sorry, Kamal.
I wanted to say, it's not just your story. You kind of laid a beautiful roadmap, if you will, of resources that are within you that you can tap into to find yourself and to reach a state where you can turn tragedy into a triumph. So thank you for sharing your story, Veena. Do you have any other words of inspiration for someone that who's struggling with loss or grief right now? Do you have any ending words of wisdom for them or inspiration?
Steve Jobs was 1000% right. You cannot connect the dots looking forward, but they do connect looking backward. And every experience of our life makes us who we are, whatever it is, good, bad, ugly, and including our own weaknesses. So we spend so much time, especially when we're young, denying all of that. So don't let a tragedy define who you are. You decide how you want to define the tragedy. And that's what I learned.
Beautiful.
Beautifully said. We can't wait to read your story called The Red Light and the Wings of a Woman, coming in December 2020.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.